Hi there, today we're going to talk about the Air France flight. This is an accident that eventually led to the death of 228 passengers in the Atlantic Ocean. It crashed in the June, June of 2009, I'm sorry. And it is a flight from Janeiro, Brazil to Paris, which is this is what South America looks like, and it crashed about the Atlantic Ocean. So this flight crashed because the lack of resource management, the poor use of resource management. And this aircraft model is an Airbus 330. The crew for this flight, we have the captain, 4 stripes. His name is Marc Dubois. He's a 58-year-old, very experienced pilot. He has joined the Air France around February of 1988, so he's been flying with them for a very long time. Carried around 16 rotations to South America, and he arrived at the A330/A340 division in 2007. And as for the first officer, we have a slightly younger pilot. He's only a 37-year-old. His name is David Robert, and another pilot, his name is actually two of them. David at the time is resting while Dubois is taking control of the flight. Now the senior pilot was granting permission for David to take control of the airplane, which they both agreed on. So the whole trip was fine up until the point where they lost their airspeed indicators. So the airspeed indicator is gone, therefore the autopilot is disengaged. And because they did not have the autopilot, and the airspeed indicator is broken, the problem happened when the aircraft shifted into an unknown mode, which was about the controls of the airplane during autopilot is what the first officer was more used to. He's more used to the controls when it is on autopilot. But since we don't have that anymore, the airplane went into the alternate Law 2 mode, which made the stick extremely sensitive. Now, this is almost as if they were to taken out of the cockpit into a new plane that they know almost nothing about and asked to fly without the airspeed indicator. So this is already a disaster, a recipe for disaster. What's worse is that the captain did not understand what the first officer was doing. The first officer had the yoke all the way back. If it was not all the way back, he was controlling the yoke and putting the yoke back. However, the yoke in the captain's side remained the way it was. So the captain had no way of knowing that the first officer was controlling the yoke and putting it back the whole entire time, while the airplane was losing airspeed and altitude. And they didn't realize the gravity of the situation, even though the alarm happened about over 50 times. The airplane tried to warn them that the plane is about to stall, but they ignored the warning, and the co-pilot said, "I don't know what's going on. What is happening to us? I don't understand." This could have been avoided, let's say if they were in, let's say, a Boeing cockpit. That Boeing cockpits have yokes that if yoke 1 moves, yoke 2, even if it's easier to tell that one control can influence the other control, that means they're linked. And even though it's easier to tell if you had a Boeing, hypothetically, it is still bad crew resource management, because you can look at the instruments, the pitch indicator, that the airplane is in fact pitching up and losing altitude. Even a private pilot should be able to pick it up, but instead, both the captain and the first officer didn't realize that they were descending at a rapid rate. They were losing altitude at a rapid rate. Because he had to stick back all the time, for the whole time. And when they finally reached about 10,000 feet, they said, "I still don't know what's happening. I think we may be about to crash." And when the captain asked for the controls, I believe they were already too close to the ocean. Now, during this whole time, the team, first officer, the captain, need to work together in order to command this aircraft properly. And the first officer was obviously not familiar with the controls after the autopilot has been disengaged. And the controls, since it acted very differently than what they're used to, he's been banking the yoke left and right, overcompensating, overcorrecting, and which resulted in the crash.